Been a bad bitch, Kakiana, and I'm still winning Pakiana.
Hey y'all, this is Kyla. I hope that y'all are all doing great and that y'all had a fabulous day. I'm an avid book reader. That actually started again about a year ago, because growing up I always had a book in my hand. Last year, one of my goals was to get back to reading, because that's something that I love so much. So I have read so many books in this past year that I wish that I could do a video on all the great books that I've read. But right now I want to talk about 3 good books that I've read this year so far. So the first book that I have is called Afeni Shakur, Evolution of a Revolutionary. And this was written by Jasmine Guy. And if y'all know who Jasmine Guy is, then obviously you've watched A Different World. That is one of my favorite old school sitcoms. But yeah, would that be considered a sitcom? I don't know. Afeni Shakur, if y'all don't know, is Tupac Shakur's mother. And this book is about Afeni. Like, it details from when she was young to like her life to like a little bit after, a few years after Tupac had died. She actually like passed away in recent years, but this book was way before her death. One reason why I love this book is because Jasmine Guy and Afeni did this book collaboratively, and like you can tell that they worked together, because reading this book it felt like you were sitting down in the living room with them hearing about the stories. Jasmine is the writer and Afeni is the, I guess you would say, like the vocalist. I don't know if that makes sense. She's writing about their conversations that they had between each other. And the way that the book is written is really lovely, because it makes you feel even more connected to Afeni. This woman is a badass. Like, just a brief summary, because there's so much in this book, but she came from a lot. She talked about being dark-skinned, growing up being a dark-skinned woman in America, but being a young girl, like experiencing bullying because of the color of her skin, to when she's 19 and the Black Panther Party is becoming more popular, more well-known in the Black community. She jumps into the Black Panther Party. She becomes basically a leader in the Black Panther Party. She talks about her experience of that. If y'all aren't familiar with the 21 trial, it's like the Panther 21 trial. The cops had arrested 21 Black Panthers because they were infiltrating this group. They were trying to separate this group because obviously they were powerful, badass Black people, so they were a threat to the government. The government basically was trying to get all the leaders in this group and take them down, so that then the whole organization could come down. So this group of 21 people that were in the party, they were charged with bogus police charges. If you added all the charges of everybody together collectively, it totaled, I feel like, over 300 charges. This case went on for like a couple of years. So she talked about her experience of being on trial, and also let me tell y'all how badass this woman is. They was trying to give her a lawyer. She talks about how the Black Panther Party, they all have these lawyers, and they start divvying it up, and basically they was gonna give her one of the lawyers that she felt like wasn't experienced as she needed the lawyer to be, because she was facing a hard time, you know? And so instead of going with what people were telling her to do, she defended herself. She defended herself on trial, and in the end, she won. This woman is so powerful. She's been through so much real life shit, and she was just so strong and resilient. And I think that one thing that made her even more powerful to me is her ability to point out her flaws and point out the mistakes that she made, and like you really see that she's grown from it. It's an amazing read, and it's not even that long. Like, it's like 200 and something pages. And if y'all, it's Black History Month, so I read Black books all the time, period, but it's Black History Month, so that gives y'all even a better reason to pick this book up. So the next book that I read was When Chickenheads Come Home to Roost, A Hip-Hop Feminist Breaks It Down by Joan Morgan. A funny story about this book: when I was a freshman in my undergrad, which was like 4 or 5 years ago, I had did a paper on hip-hop, on women in hip-hop, And I remember like this book was one of my resources, but I was only able to like read like an essay, like one of the chapters out of this book. And I had said back then 4 or 5 years ago that like, bro, like when you get the chance, you need to buy this book so you can read this whole book by yourself. And like 5 years later, here we are. Joan Morgan, she's an author. She's a black woman, of course, and I feel like she grew up in New York. This book, she talks about hip-hop, she talks about the different aspects of hip-hop, and she also talks about the different aspects of feminism, and she talks about how a lot of times those two different things are considered opposites of each other, and they're considered like a contradiction. Like a lot of people feel like, how can you call yourself a feminist but say that you love hip-hop, you know? And she has open, honest dialogue and an open, honest conversation. It feels like she's having a conversation with me about these two things. It acknowledges the fact that they can be contradicting, but that you can still love them both just the same. She's so honest and real. Like she talks about being a woman, but wanting to be with the man that is chivalrous, if that's a word. Wanting to be with the man that'll cater to you and that'll do all these things. Like, yes, I can do it for myself, but I want you to do it for me too. One chapter in this book talked about if like the goal of feminism is the equality of all genders, and specifically focusing on women because women have been oppressed and have been seen as inferior to men for a long time throughout history. We all know about patriarchy and all that other shit. How is it that we say that we're feminists and that we want equality of all genders, but we refuse to acknowledge some of the oppressive situations that men live through, such as child support? We live in a society now where women have the right to have an abortion for whatever reason, and we're pro-choice, and we feel like women have the rights to decide whether or not they want to be a mother, that that's their decision. How can we still out the same breath say that men have to be responsible for children regardless? For example, like you have a young girl saying, you know, she got pregnant, she gets an abortion because she said, I'm not ready to be a mom, like I still have to live my life. On the other hand, you have a young man saying like he got a girl pregnant, he's saying like, I'm not ready to be a father, I still have to live my life. This mother has the opportunity to choose not to be a mother. This father doesn't necessarily have the opportunity to choose not to be a father, because even if he chooses not to be in the child's life, even if he chooses to go on and live his life, he still might get hit with child support and he gonna have to pay that shit. But that was something that she talked about in this book. And so I feel like one thing that I love about good books is that I might not agree with everything that the author said, but it gives me the opportunity to think and question things that I just always just went with the flow with. The last book that I have to show y'all is a book that I'm not even finished with yet, but I've been working my way through, and this is like the type of book where like I don't like to read, I don't want to read it too quickly because it has so much information. If I fly through it, there's no way I'm going to absorb everything. This book is called Sister Citizen: Shame, Stereotypes, and Black Women in America for Colored Girls Who Consider Politics When Being Strong Isn't Enough by Melissa V. Harris Perry. This type of book is more so on the academic side. She really talks about the history of Black women. She talks about like the different stereotypes such as the sapphire, the mammy, the strong Black woman, and yeah, I think those were the top 3 stereotypes that she talked about. But she also talked about the history of these things, and when she talked about the history of things, it was like a lot of this book was just so amazing to me because she brought everything full circle. Like she really was bringing in the well-researched, thought-provoking historical facts. One thing that I really enjoyed in the last chapter that I read was she talked about how the government has done some things to harm our Black women, our population just in general. She started talking about involuntary sterilization. And that, for some reason, that really like stuck out to me, because when she had brought it up, she had talked about how like a lot of black women had been illegally sterilized, you know. Well, it was legal. Actually, it was legal to sterilize them, but it was just very immoral and unethical. And like when she had brought that up, like I was just like, okay, what? And then I put the book down and went on a whole research rant and just found so much information about eugenics. Eugenics is basically what Hitler used to justify the Holocaust. And so eugenics is like certain scientists and people in that profession, they believed that there was a good gene. The good gene was like, I don't want to say white people, because like nowadays like we see Jewish as white people, but that obviously even in itself was a transition over time. Like there was a certain point in time where Jewish people were on the same social hierarchy as black people were, you know, but now it's different, you know, because they're considered white. But there was a time when they weren't considered white. I think it's like they say like Anglo-Americans, they were like considered those who had good genes, so everybody who wasn't that didn't have good genes. And so they tried to use this science to justify basically why black people, Jewish people, people who didn't fit the mold that they wanted their society to have, why it was okay to basically stop them from procreating and basically genocide. It's just interesting because the man who created the eugenics society here and developed eugenics here in America was Charles Darwin's cousin, and he took some of his information that he learned from Charles Darwin to justify his whole eugenics theory. They really did. They targeted other communities as well, but I'm specifically focusing on our community, the black community. We definitely were targeted, and they used the eugenics studies and stuff that they were doing to justify why basically having a black genocide was okay. Tried to stop the black community from procreating because black people were imbeciles, black people were slower, black people were lazy, black people were violent. Like they use all these things to label us as that. And it's interesting too because it's like a lot of times they didn't even say, like, I watched a documentary on it, I'll try to put the link below, but a lot of times they didn't necessarily say like, oh, the Negro man or the Negro woman. Like they didn't always have to say that. I obviously I can't say it exactly in their words, but like this person who's slow and has like a low IQ, and basically like we don't want them in our society. And then that obviously translated into black people because that was what they labeled us as being. This book basically got me thinking about eugenics and questioning it, and then I was able to do more research from it. And Planned Parenthood, y'all, the lady who started Planned Parenthood was a part of this eugenics society. Like, it's just so much information out there that we can learn as a people, as women, as educators, as just citizens, if we just read and took the time to, like, sometimes we don't gotta watch Love and Hip Hop all the time. Like, we could watch a good documentary, you know? Like, it's just about balance. Those were the 3 good books that I've read so far this year that I want to share with y'all. If you have any questions about the books, then be sure to leave them down below. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see y'all in the next one.